It was very, very blurry. I think like I was really overwhelmed with what it could be, especially that fear of the unknown.
And I can't hide, 'cause growing pains are keeping me up at night.
Hi everyone, welcome back to this week's episode on Take a Pain Check. I'm so excited to have Abigail joining me today. Hi Abigail, can you give me a brief introduction about yourself? Tell me a little bit about your education, your hobbies, and what you've been up to recently.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Currently I'm a junior at Simmons University in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm studying political science and journalism right now. In the meantime, I mean, I've been doing a lot of writing. I'm editor-in-chief of my college newspaper and things like that. So I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of reading, but recently I've been home for my fall break. So while I've been home, I've been doing a lot of baking as well. Now that I have kind of fuller kitchen access, so that's been a really, really good way for me to keep busy. And then I actually head back to Boston today for my last 2 weeks or so of the semester, and then I have a nice long break.
Yeah, that'll be so nice. I guess when we are filming right now, it's like US Thanksgiving
Yeah.
kind of happened. So, are you originally like from Boston?
Yeah, so I'm an out-of-state student. I'm from the greater Baltimore area originally, so I moved up to Boston to go to college.
Okay, nice. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your diagnosis journey because that's why you're on the podcast. So can you tell me a little bit about what you're diagnosed with and when you were diagnosed?
Yeah, so I have seronegative JIA. I was diagnosed around 2011. I was in second grade, so I was around 7 or 8.
Okay, and what kind of led you or your parents to kind of say, hey, we need to go see a doctor?
Ooh. Well, that's a journey. I was really active as a kid. Like I was always in sports. I was always doing things, always moving and things like that. And then this one day, one of my knees just absolutely ballooned and started swelling. And, this freaked my parents out a little bit. So my mom took me to my pediatrician, who said, go see this orthopedic surgeon. And over and over and over for months, the orthopedic surgeon was like, oh, you're fine. There's no swelling. And so for a long time, we were just like kind of in that gray area of not really knowing what was going on because my knees were continuing to swell. And every time we would go to my orthopedic surgeon, the swelling would kind of subside. It was very much ebbing and flowing. And it got to the point where it got really, really severe. And my mom had kind of finally had enough of it. And she put me in the car. We drove to the surgeon. And she was like, it's swollen. You're seeing it. I don't care. Like, we're coming in right now. Things like that. And it was so severe that the only thing that they could really do was send me to a rheumatologist who pretty much immediately diagnosed me from there with arthritis. And he was really, really upset with the orthopedic surgeon who had initially saw me because they had waited so long to send me to a rheumatologist and had kind of allowed my body to get to that point.
That's pretty rough given that you were also so young. So, can you tell me a little bit about what it was like for you personally in terms of the emotions that were kind of going on in your mind when you were getting diagnosed? I mean, you were young, so I don't know what that
Yeah.
was like.
I mean, like I said, like I was kind of young. I can't say I remember too much of that journey. Like it was very, very blurry. I think like I was really overwhelmed with what it could be, especially that fear of the unknown. I had no idea people this young could even get arthritis until I was directly affected by it. So it was definitely overwhelming. And then pretty much instantly I was on a whole slew of medications and I didn't really understand what they were doing to me and why I was kind of feeling certain ways. I definitely for a long time say that I was really in denial of kind of having it. I mean, I was aware, like I was like, oh, okay, I have arthritis, but I didn't really kind of fully process what that really meant and how that was going to affect me for the rest of my life. And I knew like people my age wouldn't really understand. Like I didn't really tell people. I also have mild cerebral palsy, which kind of affects my mobility in other ways too. And that was another diagnosis where I just like wasn't really telling people about it either because I had just kind of told myself nobody was going to understand. And so that was overwhelming and also a little bit lonely because I didn't really have anyone who kind of understood what I was going through.
It's really hard as a young person to be diagnosed with chronic illnesses and then not have that community to go to. I think similarly for me, that was the same thing. I was diagnosed with JIA at 13, so I also didn't really know many people till obviously later on, but I'm glad that you were able to share that with me. And I'm curious to know because you're going to then progress into high school and then university now. How did accommodations look like for you? Was that something that you registered in? Did you not even try to get accommodations? What was the process like?
I honestly didn't really think I needed them. So it's kind of my arthritis affects me very, very weirdly in the sense that I never really experienced pain. The main thing that kind of tells my doctors that I'm in a flare is that there's like visible inflammation, visible swelling, things like that. And so I actually flared right when I was finishing elementary school and right when I was finishing high school, or not finishing high school, starting high school. So two like really, really tough times for somebody to flare like that. Um, I mean, my mom like told my teachers because I was also kind of jumbling between multiple medications that would affect me in certain ways. So she would email my teachers and be like, "My daughter has arthritis. Here's the medication she's on. Here's how like it'll affect her," and things like that. I wish for me like I had been a little bit more educated about what I could be dealing with on these medications. Like methotrexate caused so many side effects that I didn't even kind of register them as being from the methotrexate, if that makes any sense. Like every night when I would take my pills, like I would get super nauseous after, and I never was like, oh, this nausea is a side effect. So I dealt with a lot of fatigue and brain fog. So I had a really rough first semester of high school because and I think a lot of that was because I wasn't really able to kind of advocate for myself and like my teachers weren't always the most supportive. And if I had just been able to tell them like, hey, my arthritis flared up, here's what I'm going to be experiencing, like it could have been, I think it would have been a lot easier to kind of navigate high school in that regard. And then when I got to college, I was in a period of stability. I had like entered a remission at that point my senior year of high school. So I had been about a year since I had really been on like methotrexate or anything super intense. I had like dealt with some pain on and off, but my doctors were always like readily available, super accessible, even though I'm a little further away from home, which is really, really great and a really wonderful thing that I have. I recently actually applied for housing accommodation because I won't lie, and I will say that my college campus is not the most accessible in the sense that a lot of buildings just don't really have like elevators, and I was on the top floor of a residence hall, and I had no choice but to go up the stairs. And during periods where my pain was super, super bad, like that was just something I couldn't even imagine doing. And well, now I'm in a residence hall where like there's an elevator and now I only go up like one flight of stairs, so it's a lot easier. But I applied for a housing accommodation just to make sure like I wouldn't risk kind of that happening again.
That's good that you're being proactive about it and you're trying to find solutions to kind of help you out, despite you not maybe getting those like accommodations at first, but just thinking about other things that people may not even think about, such as
Yeah.
housing. And so I'm wondering, you talked a little bit about methotrexate briefly, but what was your medication journey like?
It was we were kind of toggling between multiple before we found a regimen that really worked for me. So I was on, I don't want to say high doses of methotrexate. For I mean, I know you've done just over 100 episodes of Take a Pain Check, so I'm sure people are aware of what methotrexate is, but for people who are listening for the first time, it's a chemotherapy agent. It's really commonly used for cancer and other autoimmune diseases in addition to JIA. So I was on kind of a higher dose that they would give kids with arthritis at first. I was on naproxen. I've taken meloxicam. So naproxen and meloxicam are both in the NSAID classification, the non-steroid anti-inflammatories. Um, Meloxicam and naproxen both didn't really do much to cause my pain, but then they also like were upsetting like my GI system. Naproxen actually gave me a pretty big stomach ulcer too. So I've been in like gastroenterology care as well. And then after my stomach ulcer diagnosis, my rheumatologist put me on Celebrex, which is another NSAID, but it's a little bit kind of tamer on the stomach. And then I'll take additional medications to kind of help calm my stomach and protect it. Um, and then the Celebrex has been really good at kind of keeping me out of pain, helping me manage that as well. But it's also caused things like dry mouth, brain fog, things like that. Um, so I mean, they all have their side effects. I feel like you just really have to know how to manage them.
Yeah, a lot of them do. And I mean, my rheumatologist put me on naproxen just in addition to trying out a biologic. But
Yeah.
I feel like they don't talk about the long-term side effect that, for example, naproxen could have. And so because you kind of experience the different side effects, I mean, the only thing that I've experienced personally with methotrexate was the hair loss and nausea, and then with prednisone, which is kind of like looking a little puffy and like eating a lot of food and gaining weight.
Oh, yeah, I took prednisone too.
Yeah, and so I've really experienced those symptoms, I think, the most. And I think one of the biologics that I was on, they gave me discoloration around my neck or something, and then it went away after I stopped it. It's just things that we don't really talk about. I'm wondering because you've been on these different medications, and then you also mentioned that you were in a period of remission. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so I've experienced two flares, and so like with those periods of remission too. My first two periods of remission were both less than a month before I flared again. My second flare, which was when I was in eighth grade, kind of going into high school, I was put on like probably the highest medication dosages I had ever been on. This did include prednisone as well. And then I was on methotrexate was consistently the medication I was kind of most loyal to. It kept me out of pain, kind of helped me manage everything. Um, I was on that for about 3 years, all throughout high school. And then I stopped it my last year of high school. I haven't been on methotrexate ever since, but then a little later into my final semester of high school, I started dealing with some pretty constant pain. So, I saw my rheumatologist and they were like, oh, the wear and tear of your inflammation is causing the cartilage in your knees to really wear down. And so I'm on like pain medications and everything to manage it. I still consider myself in remission because I'm not dealing with any visible inflammation, any visible swelling. But it definitely is still affecting me in different ways. Like I'm dealing with like brain fog. I don't know if you experience this, but it's called Raynaud's phenomenon, like where you're in the cold and your hands kind of they'll turn white or blue or kind of discolor in different ways. And then when you're back in warm climates or something like that, they'll go like super, super red. So I've been dealing with that too. So, like other ways that it affects me other than inflammation, and also kind of learning how to manage those as well.
I haven't experienced that personally. I think because I had joint injections, the area in which that was injected, it gets really discolored. And then if I'm in very hot environments, it's super red. And then if it's in cold environments, it's white. But it's like only that specific part that was injected. So I don't really know. Like, there's been no diagnosis or anything. So I think my doctor had just
Yeah.
mentioned that, oh, yeah, if you get a lot of joint injections, potentially it can have a lot of discoloration. But that was only after I asked. Like when I was gonna get the joint injection, no one said, "Hey, by the way, you could be getting this discoloration on your hands." But then it's
Yeah.
like now I get it, and I go back to the doctor, and they're like, "By the way, yeah, that was a thing that could have happened."
Yeah. I had a joint injection too. They didn't really tell me too much about it, but as soon as they kind of toyed around with the idea, I started Googling. I was like, what does this mean? What are the side effects? So I could kind of prepare myself. I try not to rely too much on the internet, but then I didn't really deal with a ton of discoloration other than the injection site. So,
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it bleeds to that area, and I'm just confused.
oh,
I've gotten it
yeah,
so long ago, but it's just, I mean, we don't have the right places to get information, so then a lot of us just
right.
end up Googling, but then we know that that's not the best thing to do. But then it's like,
Yeah,
what resources should we use?
exactly.
Which makes it very challenging. So we talked
Mhm.
about your medication side effects, and also we talked a little bit about your diagnosis journey. So being diagnosed at such a young age is pretty difficult. How did
Yeah.
you find that this affected the different parts of your life? So including socializing with friends or feeling lonely. How did that work?
Yeah, I mean, I had to really stop all the activities I was doing in the middle of like my diagnosis journey. Like I was in like, horseback riding, I was on a swim team, I was doing martial arts. I really had to stop all of that while we were figuring out what was going on. And then once we figured it out, I mean, I was given the option to return to things, but I didn't really want to. Like I went back a couple times to my martial arts team and I just remember feeling like really out of place because everyone had made so much progress and I was just kind of stuck where I had been like I took pretty much a year off of it. I just felt really behind everyone and that was really frustrating. Um and then in school, I remember like I would miss class to go to the doctor. I like would be just feeling certain ways. And I just remember thinking like how nobody really understood. I mean, I knew kids who had like certain medical conditions and things like that, but I hadn't really met anyone who knew exactly what I was going through, and that was really really isolating. Like I just remember like thinking in my head like I wish I had somebody who like really understood it. It's like someone who really gets it. And I mean, now that I've gotten to college, it's actually pretty common for me to find people not only with autoimmune diseases, but actually with arthritis specifically. I swear I've met like five people who go to my really small school of about 1,800 people with arthritis, and I just like I kind of feel that kind of sense of community. Like, even if it's people I've only talked to like a couple times, like, we know that we have one another to really lean on. And that's been really helpful. I'm also part of the Arthritis Foundation's like ambassador program. So they paired me up with a mentor whose daughter is similar in age to me. She's a little bit younger. She also has my diagnosis. And so that program was super, super fantastic. And so through the Arthritis Foundation at, I believe it's just the national level here in the United States, but you're meeting like so many people who understand exactly what you're going through. There's different support groups. They offer a ton of different resources. It's a really, really great way to kind of get that sense of community. And
Oh,
I'm really kind of
that's
gotten all
amazing. That's amazing,
that.
and I'm glad that you were able to meet other people and build a community for yourself. In terms of advocacy, when did you decide to start advocating for yourself?
I mean, like throughout my entire like journey with arthritis, I just remember kind of feeling a little bit lonely and wanting to find people who understood how I was feeling and what I was going through. And so I just decided to start volunteering with the Arthritis Foundation just because I knew that that could give me a support system and everything as I kind of tackle the ins and outs of this really big condition that gives you a lot of unknowns. And so I pretty much instantly was like paired up with a mentor and we did a lot of really like work that could prepare me for future advocacy work. So I started going to like kind of volunteer groups. So I was meeting a bunch of other volunteers. I volunteered at a gala in Boston, but that was done by the Arthritis Foundation. And so I was able to meet a lot of rheumatologists in that area. There were other people there with my condition. There were a couple volunteers and even attendees who had my diagnosis to a T, actually, which was really, really exciting to meet someone who really, really understood it. I'll be volunteering. They do these things called Jingle Bell runs through the Arthritis Foundation. I'll be volunteering at one in Massachusetts at the end of this week. I've actually even met with some like lawmakers and policymakers. I actually used to intern for my member of Congress. I don't know how well versed you are in US government, but think it's pretty similar to a member of parliament in Canada. I could be wrong about that, which would be really bad because I'm actually half Canadian. I feel like I should know that. Um, yeah, so I met with my congressman who I used to work with. Like the whole team there is aware of my condition and everything. I've met with state senators in Massachusetts. I'm going to meet with federal senators in the coming weeks. So I'm definitely kind of continuing that advocacy, which has been really, really great, kind of making people more aware of not only what I go through, but of what thousands of other people are experiencing too.
So you said you're half Canadian.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
My mom was born in the Toronto area and she was raised in Canada. Her whole family is all still up there too.
Okay.
Um,
Do you come often to Canada?
yeah, I'm actually coming in like 2 weeks for the holidays to go see my mom's family, but I'm up there like all the time.
Okay, yeah, it's becoming cold now. But then again, you're also like studying kind of nearby in a way, like driving distance. Um,
Yeah.
so the weather is like not amazing in Boston either, is it?
No, Boston can get really, really, really cold.
Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about your life post-diagnosis and doing theater as well as writing?
Yeah, so like I said, I kind of had to give up the sports I was doing and that was honestly kind of a blessing in disguise in a way because I had done theater throughout my childhood even before I was diagnosed and I always loved it. I always loved going to watch theater and everything. I just really, really loved it. And a lot of my friends who were older than me and had kind of started in high school were joining my school's theater program. And they were all just saying, like, this is the greatest experience of my life. I'm making friends I'm going to have forever. And it was just always a program that put on really sensational shows, always one where I really saw myself getting involved in some way. And I definitely knew I really liked like acting and singing and dancing and everything. So I knew as soon as I started high school that that was where I was going to end up. And I like really completely fell in love with it. I made really, really great friends who I still talk to, even though I'm 2.5, 3-ish years into college. Um, but right when I started theater was when I was in my more intense flare when I was about 14. Um, and kind of looking back on it, I wish I had advocated for myself more and kind of modified certain things that were harder. I didn't really feel like anyone in that program kind of understood what it was like to do that kind of physical intensity while dealing with chronic conditions that affected my ability to move and my joints and everything like that. I mean, I had kind of talked about it a little bit, but that was still kind of a period where I felt kind of lost and I was just like, no one really understands what I'm going through. So it wasn't really a diagnosis I was super open about or public with at all. So times have definitely changed. Um, I kind of wish I had more kind of leaned into my diagnosis and used that to really advocate for myself and make things easier for me. But then once like my arthritis was at bay and it was a lot easier to move and things like that, and I was able to do things largely the same way everybody else could. It definitely got a lot easier, but I mean, I would like anyone who wants to do like theater or sports or anything, like I hope they don't feel afraid to um like tell their mentors or the people in charge like what they're going through and how it affects them.
I think it's very hard to get to that point where you're able to have those comfortable conversations. So I'm hoping that in the future, a lot of these places like sports teams and also just, I guess, environments are more inclusive for people with disabilities because it's really hard for like a patient like us to just have that conversation if there's no sort of
Yeah.
information or I guess no way to kind of mention it. It's very scary.
Yeah, definitely.
You have done all these different activities, and despite your diagnosis, you are still doing so much. You're an advocate, you're constantly getting involved in the arthritis community. Who is your biggest supporter in your arthritis journey?
Yeah, I mean, I probably say my parents without a doubt. I still bring my mom with me to the rheumatologist. She adores the first rheumatologist I saw. He retired over the summer. She was so crushed. So I brought her to my first appointment with my new one, which was last week. Um, just so because I knew she kind of could kind of consciously remember the diagnosis, my treatment and everything better than I could. And I knew like it's a lot easier for her to kind of explain those kinds of things to people. And like it's really great kind of having her at my appointments because if she ever needs to like fill in the gaps or if she has questions that I wouldn't even think of, like she's there to just kind of be a really, really good like support system and someone who can clarify things to my doctor. And I mean, like both of my parents have helped me like with medication and pain management. Like they're always really cognizant of like how I'm feeling and everything, and that's really, really great.
Have you had your rheumatologist like mention anything that no, you can't have your parents in the room, or I guess in Canada there are some rules about that, but I don't know how it works in the States.
Yeah, they've largely been allowed in. Um, I mean, I still see a pediatric one, even though I'm 20.
Okay.
Um, yeah, my old rheumatologist was kind of combined, so he treated both adults and children. And then when he retired, he had me go to his pediatric one. I'm assuming just because I was diagnosed as a child. But yeah, I've never had any issues with any members of my family kind of being allowed in the room. I've gone to like a single rheumatology appointment by myself and like there was really kind of no change. So yeah, no barriers in that regard.
So you didn't transition care technically.
Not really, no. I mean, I'm navigating a new doctor, but no, I haven't transitioned from peds to adults,
Will
which
you have
is
to though at some point, or for now there's no conversation about that?
so I don't really know, but in about a year and a half, I'm going to be pretty much based in Boston permanently, so I'm going to need a new rheumatologist up there. Um, I've been like kind of exploring my options. I've reached out to people in the Boston area who have my condition or similar conditions. So I like have a few names that I'm kind of keeping in the back of my mind. There is a program at a hospital in Boston called Brigham and Women's Hospital. It's called the Center for Adults with Pediatric Rheumatic Illnesses. That's probably kind of my top choice for a provider right now. So they have rheumatologists who lead that program. That's kind of where I'm leaning towards going right now. But I mean, I'm gonna kind of keep asking around. So I'm sure I'll have to transition care at some point, but I don't know. It's kind of I'm in like that weird little gray area right now. So
I know it's so interesting. Every single patient has a different journey in terms of like getting care.
yeah.
And so I was just wondering, in terms of like, because you said your parents are your biggest supporters in your arthritis and diagnosis journey. What do you think? I guess it's hard to understand how they felt during that time, but is there anything in particular that your family did to accommodate you or support you during this time?
Um, I mean, like my family was always really great at, like I said, helping me kind of manage the disease because I was young. I didn't really understand what I was going through. So my parents would always like make sure I was taking my medicines. Like they would always take me to my appointments. They always were really understanding when I'm in pain and everything. Um, we've done like the Jingle Bell runs, like I said, that the Arthritis Foundation puts on. We've done two or three of them. It's been several years since I've done one, but I'm going to be volunteering at it this year. And a decade ago, 2014, was actually my first one ever. So that's like a cool little full circle moment for me, which is exciting.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your initiatives and interests. So I guess let's talk a little bit about what is accessibility and why is it very important to you?
Yeah, so accessibility to me is just really kind of the basic principle of just ensuring that everyone, regardless of ability, has equal and fair access to everything they are like wanting or needing to do. I mean, it's important to me because like I've kind of seen how lack of accessibility affects me firsthand. You know, when I lived on the top floor of my residence hall and was forced to go up 4 flights of stairs every day, like on days where I'm, struggling to move, like that's something I can't even imagine doing. Which is hence why I applied for that accommodation. But there are also like people on my college campus who are wheelchair users or have service animals to support their time at my university. And I've seen the different ways that it affects them. And I think it's really important to kind of fight for accessibility and things like that at kind of all levels. So whether you're like me and you just kind of want an elevator to get places, or if you need like the accessible doors that'll open for you, if you need ramps to move because you can't use the stairs, like for me, it's just fighting to make sure that everyone is able to accomplish what they want or need to accomplish and how something or really anything shouldn't stand in the way of that.
I agree with you. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the challenges that you faced throughout your rheumatic disease journey.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my two biggest challenges were my two flares. They definitely, they're very, very physically hard and they're also very emotionally hard because, you're doing everything right and then you feel really, really great. And then suddenly, like, you're back to the drawing board and it's not anything that you did, like it just kind of happened. So that's always really, really hard. I think another challenge is just my like being scared to advocate initially, like because like I was really embarrassed by my diagnosis because I was young and arthritis is very typically like a disease that older people get. And I knew it's a tough thing to explain, but especially to like young elementary schoolers who really kind of have no idea that, my arthritis and your arthritis is not like my grandparents' arthritis. Like, it's such a different experience, and it's really hard to explain that to people who don't understand it in some capacity. So, I think to kind of like rectify those challenges, I really just kind of made friends and met people within the community who I could talk to. And I was like, I don't have to like be embarrassed by anything because this person understands that like this isn't your grandmother's arthritis. Like this affects young people in ways that like a healthy person wouldn't really begin to understand.
Yeah, and from what I'm hearing, it's just really important to get a community and find people with similar lived experiences because those are the people that probably know you the best in terms of the condition and how to navigate that. I mean, if you need someone to talk to and you're like, no one understands what I'm going through, I think the best way is to find someone with similar lived experiences because then you can kind of get some advice or just talk to them in general. It's great that you were able to find people in that sense and you found ways to overcome some of those challenges. I think for me, I realized that at the beginning of my diagnosis, and maybe you feel this way, it was like super duper hard. And then as we grow up, I find that it's becoming easier to manage and navigate and that a lot of people find that when they are with arthritis, like I was also in a lot of denial, more like why me? Like why do I have this? But
Yeah.
I think for me at least, I just didn't want to associate myself with like other people that had arthritis, or like I thought, oh, they're gonna make me even more sad. That's like a mentality that I had like when I was younger, and then when I realized that no, I actually need to talk to people that have arthritis. A couple years later, I reached out to them, and then I realized that the importance of community is really nice as well, and to have people that have similar lived experiences as my own. But I wonder for you, like, did you also find that your arthritis journey, or in terms of just like navigating it, got better over the years, or no?
I would say it definitely got better over the years, especially during periods where it became easier to manage because of like taking less medication or being in less pain. Like when everything just kind of eased, that's definitely where it gets easier. And I think just becoming more comfortable talking about it makes a lot of things easier. Like I'm meeting people at my school who were like, I didn't even know kids could get arthritis. And then I met you. And I was like, yep, that's kind of how it is. And like my friends at school are really, like, really great. Like they're very aware that I have it, but a lot of my friends are also like chronically ill in different ways. So even though our experiences are different, like we have that common ground and we're all really able to like support each other. And I think my biggest thing is like encouraging education. Like I remember I told my girlfriend when we first started dating that I had it, and like she kind of vaguely knew what it was. And then months later, she texted me and she was like, sometimes I read about juvenile arthritis so I can understand what you were going through. And that was like genuinely one of the most touching things that I had ever heard. So,
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I'm glad that people around you are putting an effort to also learn about your condition and kind of like
right.
support you in ways. And I think that's so important. They're being proactive and taking effort and initiative to do that. I know you're from the States, so I want to talk a little bit about the healthcare system over there. Have you had any challenges with heard of people having challenges in terms of navigating the healthcare system in the States?
I'm really lucky in the sense that I haven't had huge challenges. I mean, other than just battling with my insurance to make sure I get my medication. That's been my biggest thing. As for other people, copay accumulators are a really, really big thing. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know too much about insurance right now, but I do know that like copays and other costs that insurance bring make it really hard for people to get their medication. Like, um, my mentor and her daughter, like their story with a copay accumulator, like it's very public. Like they're very like they go to legislators' offices and they'll talk about it. And like it's like their story is like in the media and everything. And it affects her daughter's access to her biologic medication that she's been on probably since she's had arthritis. I don't know that for sure, but just like the access to medication because of the different barriers that insurance places is really frustrating for a lot of people. I don't think it should be such a hassle for really anyone to get the medication that they need that keeps them stable and moving and functioning the way everybody else does. So that's a big thing. Um, so definitely insurance and copay accumulators are why a lot of people in the States are talking to legislators and the media and things like that. Um, I'm like I said, very lucky in the sense that I've never really dealt with kind of compromised access to my medication. Insurance has always been like it's always like covered my medication and things like that. Even though they are a hassle to battle with. I had a different prescription for a different condition that they filled, and then I got it, and then I actually had an allergic reaction to the medication. And so my doctor said, "Oh, try this one." And the pharmacist was like, "Okay, like we'll order it. Just talk to your insurance company." And it was on back order in July, and I never received the medication.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know I've had some of those challenges here in Canada, so I wouldn't even say that our system is perfect either. But yeah, I've been super grateful in a sense to be able to like not have to pay out of pocket for medication. But it's just the access to medication. I guess the timely access of medication, getting it on time, has been super challenging, and I'm hoping that the system can just become better for patients
Right.
because it's like an additional stress for us. I feel like we don't need to stress about this. We just need to take our medication and move on. But unfortunately, it's constantly calling the doctor's office, calling the pharmacy, calling the insurance, and coordinating all these things. We're like, we never signed up to do all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to end off the podcast episode with an advice segment. So, what advice would you give to young adults who are unsure of their career path in the future?
Ooh, career path. I mean, I was never really unsure about my career path. I always kind of knew what I would go into. I mean, I had other passions and things that I really love to do, but like deep down, I always knew that a career in journalism was my calling. The best advice that I give to people is to always just kind of don't limit yourself, like really go in with an open mind because you never really know what will kind of come your way. Um, there's always resources available. Like there's career centers at most like high schools and universities. So they're really, really amazing. Advisors are always really great. Definitely talk to people who you love and who you trust, because a lot of times they're very, very wise and they're really great people who are really willing to like talk about those things with you. I remember like when I was kind of first considering colleges and then considering like, should I get a journalism degree? Should I get a totally like adjacent but also different degree? When I was kind of considering all of those things, like I talked to my parents, I talked to my advisor who I adore, and they definitely kind of walked me through kind of that process, what everything would look like. But my biggest thing is don't burn yourself out. Make sure to take care of yourself. Um, a lot of people tend to double major, but I mean, it's very worth it for me. It can be worth it for a lot of people, but it's also a very, very time-consuming thing to do. So definitely kind of decide early if you can do that. I mean, I decided on my double major on the later side, but if you can kind of reflect and kind of make that decision on the earlier side, it becomes a lot easier to manage. But always just kind of make sure like at the forefront of everything that you're putting yourself first.
Thank you so much, Abigail, for joining me on today's podcast episode. We started off talking a little bit about your diagnosis journey, and then we started talking about how you went to the doctor and what your diagnosis became. Then we talked about the feelings of isolation while being diagnosed at such a young age, highlighting kind of the social and mental components that you experienced. Then we talked a little bit about your passion for theater and writing and why this space is very important to you. And then we talked a little bit as well about accessibility, advocacy, and affordable healthcare. So everyone like, comment, subscribe, check out Abigail's social media channels, which I will link down below. And I'll see everyone in 2 weeks on Take a Pain Check. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Have a good rest of your day.
I can't hide.